like you learn Bitcoin, and then what's your conclusion? The big overarching conclusion is not how good Bitcoin is. It's just how defective the fiat currencies are that we used to rely on before Bitcoin. So because Bitcoin is a pure monetary asset, it causes you to realize how inadequate all the previous monetary assets were in the previous 10,000 years. And because it's a pure monetary asset, you realize how inadequate the existing equities are. And then you realize how inadequate the existing credit is. So, you know, if you accepted the world and said, well, the bond market is healthy, the equity markets are healthy, the money markets are healthy, you know, that was before Bitcoin. And then after Bitcoin, a lot of people realize, okay, well, if Bitcoin is good money, then I guess the other monies are defective. You know, but not many go beyond that to point out that the implication is all of the existing equity markets are impaired and all of the existing credit markets are impaired. No, so a lot of people rail about the, you know, the evils of fiat currency, but the truth of the matter is, you know, there's a lot of evils with all the other credit and equity instruments or all the other stores of value. Like people that thought they were going to save their hard-earned wealth by buying an apartment and Airbnb-ing it, you know, or I invested in real estate, or I decided to buy a house instead, and then they realized that the house was weight around their neck, or I bought a portfolio of corporate credit. And if you look, you know, if you look at the writings of libertarians, and you look at the writings of the Austrian economists, right? Whether it's, you know, Rothbard and the Libertarian Manifesto, right? Or von, you know, Mises or Hayek, they're very long on history. They tell you the history of money, the history of libertarian causes, the history. And then they have a lot of criticism. This is why it's wrong. But they're very short. They're very lacking on the science and on the engineering. So, for example, none of the Austrian economists actually lay out perfect money. Right? They kind of end with all existing fiat currencies are bad and gold is less bad, and gold is better. And then they stop. And the libertarians, they tell you why government intervention in all policy is generally iatrogenic, why government intervention is dysfunctional. And then they wish that governments didn't intervene. And then they hope that people will just adopt a libertarian, you know, view. But I think that the big breakthrough of Bitcoin, if you think about it really hard, is Bitcoin is an example of a perfect monetary asset. So once you saw perfect, then you can ask the question, what makes it perfect? And then you can see what's the defect. And so I guess what's really changed for me over the 5 years is having spent enough time thinking about engineering of capital and engineering of economics, you know, and looking at the door that the Bitcoin opens, I just realized that the Austrians and the libertarians, they struggle because they didn't have the science, they didn't have the engineering, and so they were hopeless. And their plight was hopeless. And Bitcoin, as we said, is hope. The solution to all these problems is never in the history of the ideology. It's in the science and the engineering. So why is it that power tends to what is the word? Congeal. Why do big companies get bigger, and why do the powerful get more powerful, and why do countries and nation states accumulate power? Right? Why? And then what are you going to do about it? Right? And I think, after you've embraced Bitcoin, if you think hard and deep enough about it, you begin to realize that there are scientific reasons why markets don't work the way you want them to work, and why political systems are dysfunctional. And then once you embrace the scientific reasons why, then you start to engineer a solution, right? And in my case, I realized that you could use Bitcoin to engineer better credit, and engineer better equity, and engineer better capital markets, right? And without Bitcoin, you can't. And the other people, they don't know they have a problem because they've never seen a perfect solution, right? So they're mired in an imperfect world.
In terms of, I guess that type of adoption, but even just broader adoption of Bitcoin, how are you kind of mapping the adoption? Are you thinking of it as your typical technological S-curve, or do you feel like because of regulatory things, it's going to be a bit of a slower grind? And if we're on that S-curve, where would you say that we're at currently?
I don't have a strong model. I just think every quarter, every year, we get more adoption. And it's going at a different rate in different parts of the world. That's the famous William Gibson phrase, the future's already with us, it's just not evenly distributed. So in some places, the adoption is going to be more conservative, and it's going to manifest itself in financial institutions that are conservative. And in other cases, it'll be through new technical things. Like for example, the news story this morning was the largest shareholder in my company is Vanguard. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's an example of hyper conservative adoption because Vanguard's a company run by a CEO that said that he doesn't believe in Bitcoin and they don't want to let anybody buy it. Okay, it's not a technology leader, right? It's not the Bitcoin is running on an iPhone or an Android phone. It's not an AI. It's actually a completely passive adoption. But it's so passive and subtle that even the company that doesn't even like the asset ends up owning a lot of it, right? So I guess the metaphor is like, okay, you're a retired firefighter and you own Bitcoin even though you hate it. You see, well, how did I end up owning it? Well, I mean, I've got a pension fund, and the pension plan is sitting in an index fund, and the index fund owns a percentage of the whatever, and they own a lot of Bitcoin. So you will see that kind of adoption passively creeping into the financial system. I think we did an analysis. We observed there are about 55 million beneficiaries of MSTR. You think they all know that they own Bitcoin? No. Most of them don't even know that. They don't even know who we are, right? So there's a lot of people that are beneficiaries. They just don't know, right? If we ended up getting put in the S&P 500, there'd be 100 million plus that wouldn't know. So I think that's one extreme, which is just passive adoption by osmosis, just because you can't escape it. And then the other extreme is I hold my keys, I run my node, I have my signing device, I have multi-sig, I'm hardcore, right? And I'm very determinate or decisive about it. And then, there's everybody in between, I got Cash App or I have Apple Pay, and then on one day Apple will push an update giving everybody access to Bitcoin, and it's like I didn't ask for it, but it's the icon popped up on the phone. So there'll be that too.
What is one of the biggest pieces of advice that you would give to this hypothetical person that's beginning their life that they can do to ensure success in the future?
Harness digital intelligence and harness digital capital. The two biggest trends in the world right now are digital intelligence and digital capital. And digital intelligence, we call colloquially AI, right? But it means that you should focus on it, master it, figure out how to use it. Don't be afraid of it. I meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people in their 20s, and they're like, "I'm working very hard. A bank analyst. I'm running spreadsheets. I'm doing this." I said, "Well, so are you using AI to do that?" They're like, "No." Okay. Why? Like, at this point, any problem that I run into, I would go to one of a couple of AIs. I put it in deep research mode, and I would grind it, and then I would do that 20 times. And then I would look for ways to grind it against itself. And I find that it'll oftentimes do the work of 20 people that would take a month, that I can get the work done in 10 minutes. Maybe I can get 200 man years of work done in 3 hours. Wow. So I would be horrified and terrified if I wasn't using AI to do whatever I'm going to do. So if you're going to work, probably the most productive work you can do is figure out how to program an AI to do that work. It doesn't matter what it is, whether you're an artist or if I'm a podcaster, I'd be thinking, I wonder if I can take the podcast, feed it to AI, and spit out 100 different languages. And can I use the AI to market it? Can I use the AI to translate it? Can I use the AI to summarize it? Can I use the AI to sell it? Right? Can I use the AI to redistribute it on different distribution channels? And then I would be thinking, will the AI eat what I'm doing? Et cetera. So I would be thinking very hard about that. And then on the digital capital side, I mean, it's simple. If I live in Canada or wherever, I figure out how to get a government sponsored or subsidized loan and buy Bitcoin with it. If you can borrow money I remember people used to make fun of me. It was like, I said, mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin. The mortgages were 30 years and they cost 2.75% interest. And Bitcoin's returning 57% a year for the past 5 years. You could literally lock in, if you borrowed $1 million, you could make $500,000 a year with no work. If you did that silly thing. And it's not even risky. It's like, there's like zero risk. And yet I still meet people, the conventional person, wants to figure out how to pay off their mortgage. Right. So paying off your mortgage is investing your money in a suppressed government credit instrument that pays 3 or 4%. Why would you invest in 3 or 4% if Bitcoin is returning 55% or more, right? So I would figure out how to do that. I mean, personally, I would look for long-dated, inexpensive debt wherever I could find it. And then if you can't do that, then start a company and then sell equity in the company. And then as soon as you can, sell preferred equity or sell debt in the company or take the company public. So vocationally, whatever you're going to do, you got to plug digital intelligence into it. And then if you want to make money, find a way to raise capital. Find the cheapest cost of capital, the largest amount of capital, and convert it into Bitcoin. And if you're really good at it, then that becomes the business, right? Like Metaplanet, if those 10 people can create billions of dollars in a year, well, they could create 10 billions of dollars in a year. They could create 100 billion in a year. They could create they could create the first $1 trillion company in Japan. So do that, right? Right? If you can do that, right? Why wouldn't you do that, right? This decade that we're in right now, it's inevitable. The cars are going to drive themselves. The robots are going to do the work. Someone's going to launch a company that provides 1 million accountants worth of advice while only employing 2 accountants, right? You're going to unleash these things that do 1 million times as much work, as 1 million times faster, 1 million times smarter. And so before you pay someone to do the work for you, see if the AI will do the work.